Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with pasta alla matriciana. That's right, I'm going to show you how to make what I think might be Italy's greatest pasta dish, which of course is highly debatable, and there are many great candidates for that title. But what I don't think is debatable is that if you master and understand this dish, you will understand the essence, the art of Italian pastas and pasta sauces, which is all about putting very simple ingredients together in just the right way. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with this recipe's most important simple ingredient, which would be a piece of guanciale, which is usually described as cured pork cheek, but it is actually cured pork jowl. And this piece here has had the skin removed, so if yours comes with that very dark, very tough skin over the top of the fat, that will definitely need to get trimmed off. And then on the other side, this had some black pepper and rosemary that it was cured with, which I've scraped any remnants of off, so it does not burn in the pan. And yes, it is almost all fat, which as you'll see really is the secret to this dish. And what I'll do here is cut this in a little bit of a smaller piece, at which point very carefully using a sharp knife, we'll cut this into like 1/8 slices. And then once we have our slices, we'll go ahead and stack some up, and then slice across into like 1/8 strips, or lardons as they made us call them in culinary school. And while you might have to search a little bit for the guanciale, it is more than worth the effort. But if you can't find it, you can use pancetta, which is very easy to find, and will give you a very, very similar taste. And if you can't get either of those, which you can, some recipes say you can substitute with bacon, but while possibly delicious, that's not going to be anywhere close to this. Right, bacon is sweeter and saltier and smoked, whereas guanciale is simply cured, and we're able to get that pure pork fat flavor. And then besides our guanciale, we'll also need a little touch of white wine, which is optional, like all things in life. We will also need some of that fresh garden tomato sauce we made in the last video, or just some pureed San Marzano tomatoes. And then we'll finish up with some pecorino cheese. And other than some freshly ground black pepper, that is going to be it. And at this point we can head to the stove, where we will transfer our guanciale or pancetta into some olive oil, in a pan set over medium heat. And the first step here is to cook this pork until it's fully rendered and well browned. And one of the really interesting things about guanciale as it starts to cook, that fat firms up and not only turns translucent, it almost gets transparent. And it almost looks like little pieces of plastic, which I always find fascinating for some reason. Although in fairness, I am easily fascinated. And the other thing to note here is that it browns very, very quickly. Okay, basically in the time it took me to move my tripod and change the camera angle, this went from that translucent stage to the getting crispy stage in like a minute. So please pay attention. And then what we'll do once our guanciale is fully cooked and browned, but not burning yet, is turn off the heat and then use a slotted spoon to remove it to a bowl, leaving all that beautiful, magnificent fat in the pan. Okay, do not, under any circumstances, drain that fat. Okay, that is literally illegal in Italy, I assume. And then once that's set, we'll turn our heat back on to medium-high, and we will transfer in a small splash of white wine, which as I mentioned is optional, and I don't believe is in the original recipe. But I do think it adds a subtle and very important hit of acidity that's going to help cut through the richness of the dish. And all we need to do here is cook that wine for about a minute. Okay, we don't really need to reduce it all the way. We are just briefly cooking out the alcohol. At which point we can stir in our tomato sauce. And I'm using that beautiful fresh garden tomato sauce I made in the last video. But if you don't have that, you can just use the exact same amount of pureed San Marzano tomatoes, which is actually what goes in the authentic version. And yes, that sauce is thin, and you're going to see why a little later, why that's perfect for this recipe. And then the only other thing we want to add here is maybe a few grinds of freshly ground black pepper. And we'll go ahead and stir that in. And basically once this comes up to a simmer on medium-high, it is ready for our cooked pasta. Which by the way, since this sauce is so fast to finish, we can just go ahead and cook our pasta alongside at the same time. And while these days bucatini is the most popular choice for this dish, I prefer to use a small-sized rigatoni. And as usual, we're going to cook that in well-salted water, but definitely not all the way. Okay, we want to undercook this by at least a minute, because one of the secrets to perfect Italian pasta is finishing the pasta in the sauce. So what we'll do once our sauce is simmering, and our pasta is just a minute or a minute and a half away from being cooked, is that we will transfer that into our pan. And because I'm just doing 2 portions, I'm just going to use this hand strainer. And yes, there is a fair amount of water coming with that, but not only is that fine, it's necessary. And once we've transferred that pasta in and given everything a nice stir, we can go ahead and add our cooked guanciale back in. And if we want, we can save a little bit for the top as a garnish. But of course, that's up to you. I mean, you are, after all, the Madonna of your pasta alla matriciana. Which reminds me, I'm teaching you how to make the dish, not how to pronounce it. You might want to learn that somewhere else. And then we're also probably going to need a nice pinch of salt here, which depends on whether your sauce was seasoned and how salty your guanciale is, which is generally not that salty. And then what's going to happen here is that we're going to cook the stirring for a couple minutes, during which time that pasta is going to absorb the sauce and finish cooking, and that sauce will start to reduce and thicken up beautifully. And by the way, if this mixture gets too thick before your pasta is perfect, just go ahead and add a splash of your pasta water. All right, that is just you cooking. And then as far as the dismount goes, once we decide our sauce and pasta is exactly how we want, we will turn off the heat and finish this by stirring in our grated pecorino, which I like to do in a couple additions so it doesn't all clump up. And please let me stress that the heat should always be off when you stir in the cheese. Okay, if you cook the cheese after you add it, it's going to separate and fat's going to start leaking out, and you will not get that same luxurious texture. And this sauce is all about the luxurious texture. And of course, it goes without saying you're going to taste for seasoning, even though I didn't film myself doing that, but I did. And that's it, we can go ahead and plate up what I would describe as a pasta core size portion. Okay, this is amazing, but you don't necessarily want to eat a gigantic plate of it. All right, this is something you enjoy a relatively small amount, maybe after a salad, and possibly before a main course of like meat and vegetables. So just a little bonus menu planning tip. And then if we want, we can finish up with a little more pecorino and some of those crispy reserved guanciale bits. And that, my friends, as I mentioned earlier, is what I think is Italy's greatest pasta dish, since it represents everything that makes that art form what it is. Right, just a few very high quality ingredients, put together in just the right way, in the right order. And most importantly, the pasta is finished in the sauce, so that it becomes one with the sauce. Okay, if you want to make an Italian crazy and lose their mind, show them a video of someone with boiled pasta in a bowl, and then someone spooning sauce over the top. Oh no, you will learn they don't like that. And you will also learn some Italian swear words. And what's happened is all that amazingly flavorful guanciale fat has been perfectly emulsified into the tomato sauce, creating something that's nothing short of magical. And as I think I already mentioned, just because I'm using rigatoni doesn't mean you have to. All right, bucatini is probably the most popular choice in Rome, but a penne would also work. All right, as long as it has a shape that's going to suck in and hold down to pasta sauce, it will work in this, so use whatever shape you want. But no matter what you use, this really is one of the greatest pasta dishes of all time, and I really do hope you give it a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.